going for a walk and we're gonna talk. Oh yeah. Barney the Wonder Dog is there with Sean on the Mind Walk podcast.
Better. Let's go this way, bud. I was thinking we'll go down to the farm today. Have you ever been to the farm?
No.
Yeah. So, self-driving cars. Yes.
Oh, yes.
They will, you're saying, if it's a Google car, Google may be like, I'm sorry, Mr. McGranahan, we cannot take McGranahan. We cannot take you to the protest today.
Yeah, like the same way, like, sometimes like you'll see on a Google search, it'll say like, some of these search results have been removed because they didn't comply with X, Y, and Z, or there was like copyrighted content or whatever. I could potentially see a lot of problems arising out of self-driving cars, but the one thing I'm really excited about is, well, I mean, who knows, too, also, when you factor in environmental concerns, who knows what the true cost of, like, individual mobility and car ownership is? Because there's like a real good chance that cars are too expensive for everybody to own, but those costs are hidden, so we're not bearing them, so everyone owns cars. So that might change in the future, but that's not necessarily the fault of them being self-driving. But the thing that I really like the idea of is, instead of fucking flying on planes anywhere, they can configure cars very differently if they're going to be self-driving. And like...
No. No.
Barney, the Wonder Dog is off.
Whatever.
But like, instead of flying somewhere, you could leave at 10 p.m. and sleep in your car.
Yeah.
And like, have a nice relaxing sleep, wake up 12 hours later and be like 3 states away.
Oh yeah.
And I think it'll be amazing for travel if the costs aren't like completely...
Yeah, I also think that, like I was saying, like I think it should be a community thing where, each community has to share the resource. So, like, let's say it's like, but also like it's like the nature of work will change. Like everything will change. It's like, why would anybody be going anywhere that they don't have to, including a job? It's so, oh man, when I start thinking about like kind of the future of automation, it's like, oh, we will just literally just be in our little matrix bubbles. We won't need anything, the thing I'm worried about the future is obviously the human connection aspect.
Yeah. Have you read ever the Divine Invasion? The Philip K. Dick novel?
Probably.
It's sort of the sequel to Valis.
Yes. The thing is that they all kind of blend in my head at a certain point.
But like that's like the beginning. They're on Mars or whatever, and everyone's in their own isolated geodesic domes, and that dude's job is to like take the radio broadcasts from like Earth or from like the mother station, and then like transcribe them, and then like replay them to all the other Mars colonists in their individual bubbles.
Oh yeah,
and like it sort of takes I always say the word wrong, but like a Deus Ex Machina.
I think that's right.
Mechanization, like it takes him to get him out of his dome and to go visit his neighbor.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
And then it sort of kicks off from there. But like, I could definitely see that. And like there are there are environmental impacts and stuff, and like I get how like having people from like all over the city of Los Angeles and all over LA County like converging on like a single spot and like all the emissions and stuff can be problematic, but like at the same time, like I went to USC, and there was a period of my life where like USC football was really important to me, and these days,
when you were a Republican.
Not exactly. I got wiser to like, I'm not going to overinvest in football anymore. Way before I got wise about politics. But
it's interesting because I feel like that passion for both of those things are definitely there's some kind of link there, spiritual link.
But I if I sat down with a pencil and paper, I could probably figure out the year. But it was the USC-UCLA rivalry game at the Rose Bowl.
Okay.
And so, like, we went, and it was, like, all day. Like, we tailgated, like, we were drinking before the game. Then we went into the game. And then it was, like, back and forth. And then, like, towards the end of the game, it was, like, clear UCLA was going to win. And, like, it crushed us.
Go Bruins.
Like, it absolutely...
I went to UCLA.
It absolutely crushed us. And then... like, I threw ice at some guy afterwards. I was like talking shit, like maybe gonna get enough, like not like really looking for a fight, but just being obnoxious.
But also,
and like we were fucking crushed. And then we went to this pizza place in downtown LA, and we were sitting there, and my friend was like, I was with my friends. I think it was Sean and Tony. And I don't know that Sean ever transitioned out of the football thing. But, like, my friend Tony was like, this is fucking stupid. He's like, look, the sun is shining. It's, like, fucking gorgeous out. This is an amazing Saturday. Like, we spent all day, like, drinking and goofing off with friends. Like, what went wrong today that we're all so upset? Like, we had a really good time. We saw people who, like, it was like, what the fuck does... I don't even know how many people are on the field. 12 people, 11, 10, 7. But they're like, what are these football players that none of us know on a personal level? They're abstractly our team, but we don't know them. They don't know us. And it was like, what the fuck does any of this have to do with us? Yeah. And like, we sort of stared at the irrationality of it in its face, and I was like, you know what? I was like, I'm not gonna like never watch again, but I was like, yeah, this is the last time I'm gonna let it break me like this. This was stupid. Like, I've upset myself over nothing.
Well, it's interesting now that kind of just even the way you said that, it made me think like there was a time where, like, let's say even in your high school, where you did have the possibility of knowing the players on the team, and certain communities rally around. It's like it is a community thing. But, but because of the market just breaks up this whole idea of community, because the players will come from wherever. They aren't necessarily a part of the community unless they're getting paid or whatever, to be a part of the community. So and I think at a certain point, those kind of group sports were like a show of kind of like your community strength. Yeah. Yeah. But now it's like, because of the market, it's like, what does it show? It doesn't show anything. It shows maybe your community's ability to profit from but again, like, how much of that is actually going... I mean, I guess USC and UCLA make a lot of money on their football. That it allows the UCLA Brain Imaging Center to have more money, maybe, I guess. A lot of the money, at least for SC, but like a lot of the money stays in the athletics program and doesn't make it to the university at large. But I think a decent amount does. Yeah, yeah. Maybe not by percentage, but like in terms of like a bottom dollar amount, and it's like, so I've dialed back the full football thing. Yeah, but the one thing about it that is still magical is like, if you go to the Coliseum and it's like a big game, there are 90,000 people there with you watching the same thing you are. Oh, sure. And that communal experience, even though some of them are rooting for the exact opposite thing you want to see happen,
But that thing, like, that here we are in a crowd, like almost 100,000 strong, like all doing, like that, the energy there is, like,
I tell you, that's
amazing.
Concerts, whatever, anything where a group of people have a shared goal like that or a shared experience or whatever, that is, I mean, to me, like, well, it's okay. It is the most magical. So right now, I want to say something like 250 million Indians are protesting the Modi government.
Oh yeah,
some like the population of the United States, something like that. I originally heard 250,000, but somebody said no, it's 250 million, and I'm just like, how can so many people be so mad at all the same thing, you know? But I guess it's like farmers. All the farmers are being fucked by the by the government somehow.
Well, it started as farmers, but then I also heard that, like, iPhone factory workers weren't getting paid, and they destroyed like millions of dollars worth of iPhones.
Yeah. Well, you know, this is. I wish Americans had just a fraction of that. We have never, I mean, it's been since the 20s or 30s. Well, I guess maybe like some of the black revolutionary stuff in the 60s. But there's really been we haven't had a general strike in decades. And we've never really had a sense of, how can I put it? Like a sense of solidarity.
That was,
since probably the 60s anyways.
That was like Occupy.
Oh yeah,
was interesting to me because I wasn't. I wasn't like very active in it, but I went down there with a tent and I camped out in front of City Hall for a few days.
In LA?
Yeah.
Oh, nice. Over here, bud. Right this way.
And like, you know, first I went just for an afternoon to check it out, and there was like a rumor that Cornel West might speak, and then he came by and spoke.
Oh yes, I think I went there that day too.
And like that was really interesting to me, and like, I kind of knew who he was, but I'd never like really listened to him before. And I was like, oh, okay. Like, this is making me not feel so alone.
Yeah.
Just the... Because, like, you know, the keeping up with the Joneses and, like, the suburban dream and the white picket fence, it's like... America kind of sells you the idea that, like, if you're not thriving, that, like, you're the only fuck up out there. Like, everyone else is doing all right.
Oh, that's nice.
And, you know, that's like what commercials and, like, advertising tell you. But then, like, you get out and Occupy and you're looking around and you're chanting, "We are the 99%." And you're like, this shit isn't working for you either, is it?
Yeah.
And everyone's like, no, like, this is not fucking working. And, you know, eventually, even as sort of somewhat mild as Occupy was, it reached a certain point, and then it got put down very aggressively.
Yes.
And there were, like, police discussions about getting snipers to take out group leaders, and like, you know, it didn't turn... I wouldn't say it didn't accomplish anything. I think it let loose sort of a spirit. And
yeah, which I'll speak on in a second.
You know, I think it put some energy out there that we haven't seen fully manifest yet. But even for what it was, I think it really scared some of the power structures.
Yeah.
In our country.
So I'm sorry. Go ahead. It scared the power structures.
But like the other thing that I thought was really interesting was the as it went on, so sort of some of that support was pulled. But like I remember in front of City Hall, there was a fire hydrant had been tapped.
Oh yeah.
And it was run into a nice cooler drinking fountain. Like, it wasn't just like a little spigot on the end of the thing. Like, it was like turned into, it was like a proper drinking fountain. And it was like, I forget exactly what it said, but it was like LADWP stands with you.
Oh yes, I do remember those.
And there were surprising little like allies, like people within the system that weren't just like, man, like get out of here. And I was like that's kind of dope to me. That like,
well, it's so two things. The first thing is you hear things like the head of the Navy, the highest ranking Navy guy, is a super environmentalist, or at least the ones in the past. I don't know if that's currently.
Yeah.
Because they say, well, most of what we're dealing with is human reaction to resource loss in areas because of climate change. So basically, we're just fighting a war against the effects of climate change. If we can do anything we can to arrest, the climate change, then maybe we could be in a position to not have to be fighting each other for resources. Now, he has a very privileged view, and ultimately, they just want to buy weapons and stuff like that. But it was a very astute thing to say.
Yeah,
from a military person.
And the Navy's also concerned because I forget which are the most vulnerable bases, but like Norfolk, Virginia, and like all these big centers of naval power, like there are a lot of bases that aren't going to work if the sea level rises too much.
Yeah. And my favorite media theorist, Douglas Rushkoff, one of the things that he's been doing on his podcast is he's been talking to, 10 years later, these people that were prominent Occupy Wall Street figures.
Yeah.
And kind of how they've grown their ideology kind of after the fact. And, there's like a lot of micro banking, and there's a lot of little, because, he calls his podcast Team Human. So there's a lot of human scale ways of kind of rejecting the market. This is what or rejecting capitalist dystopia, corporatism. He says digital corporate capitalism. It's all three of those things together are what's causing most of the problems.
Yeah,
in our world. And so when I listen to this, I'm like, oh yeah, so there are people that are making the change. I just wonder, yes, you look at the battle between red and blue that was just fought in America, and blue won, yay! But, who cares? Like, it's like, yes, our individual lives may get better by not having an abusive, incompetent, narcissist in the office. But it's still the same fucking corporatist agenda.
Yeah, I was reading it was encouraging because it's like, okay, someone has recognized the problem and is addressing what the real problem is. It was also frightening because it was like, it was explaining how the real issue isn't that the Republicans have gone full fascist. The real issue is the inherent flaws of neoliberalism.
Oh yeah.
And no one's offering an alternative to that.
Well, they tried to with the Democratic Socialists, but
yeah, like I don't like both sides are bad because one is so much worse than the other. But like, I took a trip to San Francisco a few years ago to visit this Gnostic church that I'd been to before that really means a lot to me personally, and I absolutely love the bishop, the woman who runs it and stuff. But I was also going to San Francisco to do the Gaza 5K to raise money for United Nations Works Relief Agency for Palestine. to pay for, basically to pay for money for psychological treatment for kids who've been bombed by Israelis their whole life.
Wow.
And on my way up, you pass through the Central Valley, and like all those shitbag, not all farmers are shitbags, but there are a lot of shitbag farmers, and there's like crazy anti-abortion billboards and like anti-Hillary. And then I saw this sign on the edge of this guy's farm, and it just made me crack up, and I think about it all the time, and it just said, Republicans are red, Democrats are blue, neither one gives a fuck about you.
Yep.
And I was like,
the truth.
I've seen like 60 signs. I was like, that's the only good one.
Yeah, that's the truth. Yeah, go ahead.
Sorry, I don't mean to keep cutting you off.
No, this is great.
But like, there's an element of like, it's interesting that the first thing you brought up was politics, because like this red versus blue bullshit, it's like letting the UCLA USC game wreck my day.
Yeah.
It's like they get you to invest in this side that maybe they advocate for more things you want, but it's like they're not you and you're not them, and your interests are not the same, and you don't have to live and die by like what the scorecard is in DC.
Yeah. Well, I also think that when I criticize Joe Biden, like, and I'm going to, because I don't want, my whatever overall ideology is, I don't want anybody to be president. It's a stupid job. It is the dumbest job that has ever been invented. It's just a fucking sidestep of fucking a regent. It's just like, all it is because we left a king, we wanted somebody that seemed king-like that we could kick out. Why not a fucking council? Why not a fucking 100 people? Why not a fucking 1,000 people that fucking make the decisions for us? I don't know. It's like, it just seems so dumb that it's one fucking guy and they have to have some kind of media presence. And it's always going to be a dude, and they're usually going to be Christian, so we're obviously living in a white Christian ethno-state,
And then like...
Even Obama was still half white, People forget about that conveniently. No, I'm just kidding.
Thanks, Obama.
Yeah.
Oh, man, I just lost that train of thought.
Well, I mean, I can go back. Why a president?
Yeah. And like the Christian ethno-state thing too is like crazy, because they're like, America's always been a Christian nation, and then like you like those types of weird Christians, ask them what they think of Freemasonry. And they're like, Freemasonry is not Christian. It's of the devil, and like, it's all this evil stuff. And it's like, well, then I got some interesting news to you about America, because
it's founded on Freemasonry.
Guess what secret fraternity all the founding fathers were in? They were all fucking Masons.
Yeah.
I mean, not all, but such a huge percentage.
But the Masons were mostly anti-Catholic, right? That's kind of their ideology. They had a supreme being, and they were somewhat being in reaction to all these Catholics that were around them. I thought that's what a good chunk of the Freemasons were.
Well, so my understanding, and I could be off, but I have some friends that are Masons, and my understanding was that Masonic lodges did a lot of the political organizing in Italy that led to the loss of the Papal States.
Okay, yeah.
And because they literally lost land because of them. Like, the Pope has been like, it's an anathema to be a Mason. Like, if you become a Mason, you'll be excommunicated. And that's because they lost political power and land.
So it's more that they became the enemy of the Catholic states because of their actions.
Yeah.
But they weren't necessarily ideologically opposed to it.
Yeah. And like, as it stands now, like, the Masons will definitely admit Catholic men, but the church is definitely saying, like, we might kick you out if you join the Masons. But there are a few people who do it.
Oh, interesting.
And then like, because Christian culture always has to be derivative, the Catholics made the Knights of Columbus, which is basically like, it's like a Freemason lodge led by your local priest, pretty much.
So yeah, that was basically, did you find it? That's basically the farm. This is like this whole area, like when we were coming here, I don't know, a few months ago, there were still tomatoes kind of that you could pick over there.
Oh, that's really cool.
Yeah, and then this baseball field is closed, obviously, because of the pandemic. But then I think they sell the vegetables over here across the street.
Oh, that's like a little...
Garcia. Yeah, it's a little farm stand there. So, yeah.
This is gorgeous. I love the valley.
Yeah.
Like, growing up in Pacific Palisades, everyone around me was very snobby towards the valley. And just by osmosis, I inherited that for I was kind of like, valley, ew. And then I got older, I was like, oh, this is actually the side of town I prefer. Well, like, this is where I'd like to live. This is, like, where I'm more comfortable. Like, this is, like...
Really vox populi. Yeah, I think I grew up in Lakewood, so like the South Bay, and you know, there was always a disdain for the valley. Oh, we don't want to go to the valley. Partly, I think from South Bay it is very far.
Yeah.
It's a fucking haul. And,
like, I love the South Bay, but I'm like, oh fuck, I got to drive to the South Bay.
Also, you know, I would say like two things that have kind of shifted, which was the valley was very smoggy when I was a kid, and it's not so bad anymore, and it still gets hot, but unless you're on literally the other side of PCH, most of LA is kind of that same temperature. It might be like 3 to 5 degrees warmer in the valley on a very hot day.
Yeah,
but nothing crazy, nothing significant. Yeah,
but
oh yeah, go ahead.
Oh, not when it's ridiculously hot, but when it's just like been a moderately nice day. The other thing I like about the valley is the heat hangs in the air a little bit after the sun goes down.
What?
So like, you know, spring, late summer, you know, eating outdoors at like 8:30 in the valley. And it's like very pleasant.
Oh yeah. What? Crazy dog. I'm being attacked. I wish I had a stick to throw for you.
And then like,
so back to, I don't know, I feel like there's like Masonic history is very interesting. Because, you know, I mean, I mostly got my kind of Masonic history through Robert Anton Wilson, mostly. And then a little bit of like Holy Blood, Holy Grail. Right? And then whatever I've kind of read up on the Knights Templar. But I think, you know, it seems that, you know, modern Masonry is kind of mostly just a drinking club, right? They have some philanthropic stuff going on, but really it's just dudes that all hang out in the same lodge and they will do business with each other.
You know, I think that a lot of it is just like a fraternal club. And then like, you know, there's different lodges and different rites. Like there's like the ancient Scottish rite, and then like, I think the more esoteric rite is called the Rite of Memphis and Mizraim.
That's from Egypt. I
think so. I don't actually know, but I think that's sort of the branch that's like the most like interested in sort of like, if you ever thought there might be anything occult to learn in a Masonry lodge, I think that's the one you want to go to.
Oh, gotcha.
But so, my grandfather was an oil executive, among other things, for a long time in his life. And so I was like, there's a really interesting, I think it's Daniel Yergin, but there's an amazing documentary, or there's an amazing book and then like big documentary PBS called The Prize, all about like the history of oil and competing for oil as a resource and how it's shaped the modern world.
Oh yeah.
And like, one of the things that's really big in Masonry is the symbolism of the light. Like there's one of the rituals where like you like as an initiate you symbolize being in a coffin and like being raised up from death, and like one of the things they ask you is like, what are you seeking? And like you're supposed to say like more light, like more illumination.
Okay, I like that.
And so a lot of these early oil executives were Freemasons.
Interesting.
And when oil first developed, it was pre the industrial scale that we have now, and pre-automobile. And like what oil mostly was kerosene for lanterns.
Yeah.
And they even called oil the new illuminant. And I think these Masonic oil executives had all this inbuilt mythology about the power of light. And then they discovered this new light source that was revolutionizing the world. And I think they fucking felt called by God.
Yeah, that makes sense.
I think that gave them a complex, and they thought, like, here we are, we're going to marshal this energy source, and we're going to control it, and we're going to use it for the betterment of the good, and, like, nobody better stand in our way, because this is coming on from on high. And I feel like they felt like they were, like, God-touched.
Well, it's interesting.
And like, above the rules of men in pursuit of oil.
It's interesting, because the Wahhabis, the House of Saud, believes the same thing about they were blessed with that Allah blessed them with these. They'd been wandering these deserts for generations, and then suddenly this very potent, powerful substance is available for them. So they really think that's why they're trying to push. This is, again, coming back to Palestine. Part of the conflict in the Middle East is Wahhabism is an extremely conservative branch of Islam, and so they're basically like, super orthodox Muslims, and so they want there to be because they've been blessed with this oil, they want to deliver the message of this super conservative form of Islam to the rest of the world. But I think it's true. I think people get, and it is interesting if you look at the power of oil and how it has shaped our world and our culture, and we're kind of living in the dark shadow of all of that power right now. I mean, people are, yes, it has been created miracles for most of humanity, but then also on the back end of the miracles is all of this fucking death and disease and destruction, and the destruction of the planet. So yes, the illumination they sought is almost like, a tunnel to death. Does that make sense?
Yeah. And then, like,
wow, that's fascinating, because I can see their religious fervor. I can see that.
But then the other thing is, I think part of the reason things are so crazy now is, like, as part of that, I think it was a flawed morality. But there was a morality that went hand in hand with that is no longer there. Like, I don't know how much of this is true and how much of this was like an apocryphal story that's supposed to impart a lesson or whatever. But there's a story about my grandfather, and he worked for Gulf Oil. And so I don't know for sure that this happened in Kuwait, but Gulf Oil was mostly like big in Kuwait. Mm-hmm. And he had to go negotiate on behalf of Gulf Oil with this high-ranking Kuwaiti official who was like, they made it sound like they took like a helicopter out to like a Bedouin's tent, like in the middle of the desert.
Yep.
And I don't know that that's accurate, but he had to negotiate with this Islamic Kuwaiti official, and like the official was like, supposedly said to my grandfather, it was like, yeah, like we can do business, but like when you bring in like your oil workers and like your people, none of them are going to be allowed to practice Christianity. And my grandfather's response was like, basically like, no, that's not going to be
possible,
an acceptable term of the deal. Like, if that's really the condition, then like, we're not going to be able to make this work. And then, like, the response was like, good, because we couldn't be in business with someone who would give up on God for monetary gain.
Interesting.
And I feel like...
Oh, it was a trick.
But so I don't know how true any of that is and how much of that is just apocryphal to make a point. But I feel like, despite, like, some serious flaws in it, there was that sort of sense of morality now, where I feel like now in modern capitalism... You know, Chevron, Exxon, any of those fucking things. I think for sure they'd be like, "Oh, knock it off, guys! No Christianity. We got to keep the money flowing. Like, you can fuck your God. Like, you know, money's
our God.
Like, if your God isn't money, everyone has a God other than the U.S. dollar. Get the fuck out."
Yeah. Yeah. No, it's interesting. Especially if you look at, like, even like what Gulf ended up turning into Shell, right? And Shell uses an actual shell as their symbol, which is like, I think, Poseidon. You know, it's like they imbued these companies with kind of like ancient magic anyways.
Yeah, for sure.
So I was watching a Killing Joke documentary. You know this band? Killing Joke? They were a band from the 80s.
Okay, no.
Yeah, but they were super into magical rituals, and they have a song called Money Is Not Our God, but they used... They have a song called 80s. 80s. Yeah, but they use a lot of kind of magical rites and rituals to build themselves up as a band, and it seems to have worked. You know, they're still out there doing their thing. But I was going to mention, they have an album called the Courtauld Talks, where they're playing these 19th, these very specific tonal rhythms to try to open up portals while they're doing it. It's a pretty amazing album.
That's really cool.
Hearing him talk about it. But they were doing it kind of as both a magical performance and just, they were invited to this, I forget where it was, the Courtauld Institute, which I guess was a kind of a magical institute in England. They were, you know, kind of just coming out there to put on a show. And they used this as a way to do a magical ritual, and they recorded it.
Well, that's the thing. I think you know, rituals can certainly be entertaining. Like I had a friend at my church, and she brought this guy with her to services one day, and like they were friends, and they'd sort of made a deal where he was like, why don't you check out like where I go to worship at Self-Realization Fellowship sometime, and then I'll check out like your church. And he came to our service, and he was like so worried he was going to be offend us by saying this, but he was like, oh my God, like that was so theatrical.
Yeah.
And we were like, oh no shit, that's a huge compliment. Like that's very much on purpose. So it's like, no.
Here, bud. Get over here. No, I think the theatrics is, I mean, again, Self-Realization Fellowship sounds like it's going to be, hey, buddy. It's not going to be very theatrical. It sounds like it's going to be a lot of just sitting and reading and meditating. Hey.
Well, that's,
Hey. I gotcha. Ha. I got my prey into the warren. Come here, bud. Oh, we gotta cross the street, so I'm gonna carry you. Oh yeah, I'm sorry, what was that?
I spent some time attending Quaker services, and I fucking love the Quakers. And I also felt like what I was doing was dangerous because Homeland Security came to spy on us one time.
Really? Oh man. So this was Garcia Farms. But I guess it's all trees now. Oh, Tapia Brothers.
Well, this is really cool because I know this part of the farm, but I didn't realize it all connected back to Woodley and went as far back as it did. Like,
right?
This is really cool.
All the way to the dam, and then now we're going to go back to the golf course, and we'll circle back around to the river. What's up, bud? Yeah, no, but yeah, the Quakers, you just sit, and then when you're called to stand up and say something, then you stand up and say something, then you sit back down, and then the next person comes up and says something, right?
Yeah, and the only sort of
Uh-oh. Oh no.
I was gonna wait, but that actually worked out just fine.
Just fine. Normally I'm not so impulsive.
But you're really supposed to you know, like you're supposed to wait to really feel called before you speak.
Yeah.
Like it's not just like, oh, this has been on my mind. It's like, no, this is like the Spirit, God, whatever you want to call it, is bringing this out of me. But not only that, but then there's also like you're supposed to assume good faith. Like when someone's speaking, you're not supposed to be critical and be like, is that really what they felt called, or is that just like their opinion? If they're speaking, you're supposed to approach that like that's like that they're almost speaking with like a prophetic voice. And even if like you can't quite find the same thread that they have, and then so the problem with, I shouldn't say problem, but so like individual meetings take on like very different characteristics. Like if you go to a Quaker meeting in Santa Monica, it's probably more political than spiritual.
Gotcha.
So I was going to the Orange Grove monthly meeting in Orange Grove, Pasadena, and that was like very, you know, they were liberal politically, but the meeting was very much spiritual.
Oh, good.
Every now and then someone would speak, but like most meetings, like you just sit in gathered silence for like an hour.
Wow.
And it was like really powerful. And like it felt so good. Like I was nervous about attending for the first time when I drove up, and like they have this big mural out front of like all these children and animals like from all over the world like gathered together, and it says like, walk gently over the earth, like acknowledging that of God in everyone. And I was like, okay, like I'm digging that already. And then like you go a little further, and there's like a big sign that says welcome all. And like, oh, I like so much about the Quakers, but where it fell down is even as powerful as that gathered silence was. I was like, you know what? I need a little more ritual. I need a little more theatrics than this. Yeah. Like this is so close. Like this is like 90% of what I'm looking for. But like I need just a little bit more.
Real quick. So you said that the FBI, CIA, who was watching?
Homeland Security.
Homeland. But for what purpose do you think?
Because it was around because Quakers are anti-war, so it's like they wanted to check them all out because it was I forget why tensions had escalated at that point, but it was like around the same time as like the Peace Fresno group was infiltrated by law enforcement. I don't know if you're familiar with that.
No, I'm not.
But it was really fucking weird, and like this dude was so fucking out of place, and like
yes.
But then like, you know, that should have been enough right there for me to be like, fuck conservatism.
Yeah.
But I was still kind of managing to hold on to some conservative political beliefs. But I think in hindsight, I could tell that those beliefs weren't lasting long, because I felt like,
well, if you're at a Quaker meeting,
the fact that being radically for peace and being radically nonviolent and to believe that like there's a religious reason for that, the fact that the government views that as dangerous, oh my God, that made it attractive. I was like, holy shit, like there's something real here. Like there's something they're afraid of. I was like, that's fucking cool. Like I've never seen an undercover Fed at the Episcopal Church I grew up in. Well, like I love the Episcopal Church, but they're not a threat to anybody.
Well, it's interesting because I would say, like, I mean, the state, they are literally the sole apparatus that has legitimate use of force. I mean, that is really their only function, is they are the apparatus of legitimate use of force within our culture.
Yeah.
And because of that, they tend to be bullies. You know, they tend to fucking dominate the fucking conversation. Second, I think once, the vaccine, once things start opening up, we should shift our podcast to Sundays, and you and I should go and sample a lot of different religious meetings and do, I don't want to say a review, but...
yes.
Keep going. Keep going. Go. No, you go. Don't look at that hole. I see how your little tiny brain is working. Yeah, just like, and have a conversation, go to it, and then just have a little walk and talk afterwards, and talk about what we saw and what we observed.
I really like that idea.
Yeah, because I think no.
It conflicts. It's always. I've always kind of perpetually on my to-do list, but it conflicts with the time, sort of my own church.
Don't do it.
But like,
well, maybe we make it bi-weekly.
Builders of the Addendum. Do you know them at all?
No.
So, they're basically. This guy, Paul Foster Case, was a member of the Hermetic Order of the Golden Dawn.
What's up, bud?
And then, as the Golden Dawn collapsed, he founded his own sort of esoteric school called Builders of the Addendum. And he basically took the Golden Dawn system of magic and correspondences and Kabbalah and everything, and he was uncomfortable with Enochian magic.
Okay.
So he stripped out the Enochian magic, but kind of kept everything else the same. And he started, it's basically a correspondence course, but they have a Los Angeles temple, and they have Kabbalistic healing services at the Los Angeles temple.
Wow.
And I'm like, oh, that would be like... That would be interesting to go see, like what's actually what they're doing, and
sure. And I would even say, like, maybe if because maybe it becomes an every other week thing, where you could still have your regular practice, and then we go to some new place the following Sunday.
Yeah, and also because there was like a little schism in my church. There's church services now at 11 a.m. at the original church, and the priest that I really liked that broke away, at least before the pandemic sort of shut it down, he was having services like at 4 p.m. So like I have different options. So that definitely, but there's like, I know there's some Thelemites or Thelema stuff in town, and like there's, I don't know that they do things on Sunday, but there's that beautiful Hindu temple in Malibu Canyon.
Oh yeah.
Like there's intriguing stuff for sure. I like that idea.
Well, and also I think that ultimately they aren't always on Sundays. Sometimes there are different worship services, different times, and it's kind of like, I'll let you do the research and decide where we want to go, and then I will be a little bit of the cynic, because I think that's where because this is where I approach a lot of this. Not completely. I'm super open, but I mean, my reviews for a lot of things are going to come down to like showbiz kind of things, because one of the reasons when you talked about looking for the zazz that you needed for a home church, I go to Agape because Dr. Beckwith is he's like fucking seeing Chris Rock talk for 45 minutes, but with a spiritual, or Cornel West or whatever. He is, to me, he's truly channeling. They put on a good show. They end up having very good music. It's very like pansexual, pan-gender, pan-racial. It feels like a very like wide open way of approaching worship. And kind of like he does a very kind of nice trick of almost like defining God in a way that even my atheist mind can handle. Come on, bud. He's obsessed with this goose.
And that's like, I think I'm a little more inclined to you to see than you are to see like the supernatural at work or spiritual forces.
Oh, yeah.
But like I think that sort of sense of skepticism is good, because like one of the things that bothers me about the mainstream representation of Christianity is I feel like they insist on it backwards. Where they're like, you have to believe in your heart 100% that this is true, and then you'll start to see how powerful it is, and then it'll start to work for you, but you have to believe first. And like the churches I've gravitated to were very much like, we don't care what you believe. Like, there's power in these things that are doing.
Yeah.
And you can come into this and you can thinking that it's symbolic or that we're dealing strictly with metaphors. Like, none of... You don't have to consider this to be literal or the truth for this to work. And then, like... So I was like, okay, like... I'm coming in and I'm like, I think these are stories, and they're interesting stories in mythology, but I don't know that they're describing reality. And then, like, the more I participated, I was like, you know what? I do think they are describing reality, but I was like, I couldn't have started there.
No.
And, I really like the idea. And then also because, like, you know, I'm sure there'll be some hits, but there'll also be some misses. And like sometimes some of the best discussions is like you walk out of a movie with a friend and neither of you really enjoyed the movie, but then you enjoy ripping the movie afterwards. Yeah. You're like, oh, could you believe that part? You're like, oh my God, that was like so...
Well, and I originally I had pitched a TV show around this idea, and I was calling it Amen. But we should come up with a punchy, interesting title. Because again, like, I'm working on this rebrand at the top of the year, and I mean, obviously we won't be able to go and enjoy any of these services until there's a vaccine. You know, I mean, I'm also, this is double-edged sword, is I'm also not like willing to take a risk, even if these people are kind of like breaking the rules, because it's this weird place where like the faithful have definitely a way of approaching their lives that they can sometimes supersede disease. But these are also groups of people that are probably anti-vaxxers in general. They may be seeing, you know, if they're in this place of like just letting God sort it out.
Yeah, like there's something Cody, there's a snake handling church on YouTube.
Yeah. They're still meeting or whatever.
And I don't know about recently, but this is a couple years ago. But this pastor of the snake handling church, like he's doing this shit with this rattlesnake where he's not just holding the rattlesnake, he's kind of like fucking with it and like agitating it. And it bites him like right on the neck. Or like right on the, like it bites him somewhere on his upper body, like his face or his neck.
It's right on his carotid artery.
And like he starts bleeding, like all over his shirt, like on the front of the church. And the first words out of his mouth is he goes, I believe our God's a healer. And he keeps preaching for a few minutes.
Ooh.
And like delivering the message. And then he needs to sit down. And then he goes to the hospital. And it's like, you know.
He had to be treated for rattlesnake poison.
Yeah, and like it messed him up, and it's like, oh, guess Guess what his dad did. His dad was a snake handling preacher. Guess how his dad died? Snake bite.
Oh.
It's like, guess how his grandpa died?
Yeah.
Snake bite. And still, like, the first thing he said when he got bitten was like, I believe God's a healer.
Well, I'll also say this. They got laid. They were able to make babies. So it doesn't matter what they believe. Their genetics were born out. You know what I mean? I'm just like, it's weird to say that, but I feel like that's definitely a part of, like, these nihilistic, because it is nihilistic. It really is a way of being, like, almost suicidal, right? Like being a drug addict or whatever.
And that's like, I think that ties in, like, into evolution in an interesting way, is we think evolution is about survival, but it's actually about surviving long enough to procreate.
Yeah.
And so I think there are these, like, destructive elements that, you know, eventually they'll take you out, but they're not going to take you out before you spread some seed. Yeah. And that's like...
Well, that's where a lot of the toxic masculinity, for sure, but toxic magical thinking comes in, is like, well, whatever these things I've been doing, I was able to make a baby, so I'm going to keep doing them. You know, like, it's like, it really becomes this fucking, like, this weird self-fulfilling kind of, like, mindset of like, everything I'm thinking must be right because I'm here now, you know, that kind of thing. Yeah, but so I'd say, like, even if people are having services, they also are all of the mindset of, like, if you do get sick, it's just God's will. And it's like, well, yeah, I didn't need to show up to this event. You know, that's the other thing. God didn't will that. That was my will.
Yeah, like that's I think that's one thing that sometimes I feel a little uncomfortable sort of criticizing it from outside the culture, but I think that's an attitude that was sort of manipulated in some Muslim societies. That's held them back a little bit, was the idea that, like, it's just God's will.
Oh yeah.
Like, you know, the whole concept, it's like inshallah, like God willing.
Yeah.
And like when I do things with my Muslim friends, like, we'll pick a date and it'll be like, see you Friday, inshallah. You know, like if it's the will of God, like we'll meet Friday. And it's like like when it's done properly, I kind of like that, because it's like saying, like, yes, like, we fully intend to meet Friday, but, like, also we're not in charge. Like, things could happen.
Yeah,
like maybe it won't. And I think that's very kind of humbling and powerful. But you can also get into a twisted version of it where it's like,
oh, this is your bad things are happening to it because God has willed it.
Yeah. Or like, you know, I was born in this town. This must be where God wants me to be. Like, who am I to move to the city and pursue a better life? Like, you know, this is my patch of dirt. This is where God put me down, and, like, we're going to stay, and things like that. So I think,
well, it's interesting.
You know, because I think if you believe in a certain conception of God, then you sort of have to accept the things that happen as part of his will. But, like, whenever you try to declare something as the will of God, like, that's, like, crazy to me. Like, that's, like, the most insane, like...
Yeah, no, I agree.
Like they're preachers that get up every Sunday, and they talk about what God's opinion is on shit. And it's like, I can't think of anything more blasphemous than, like, putting words in God's mouth and saying, like, this is how God feels about what's going on. It's like, holy shit, like...
You know, when I'm in a mystical state, though, it's part of it for me is I am just open to whatever, different ideas, different impulses, different kind of, like... but usually what ends up happening is... So here's a... Okay, I'm going to give you a little creative process that I have to get behind. So I'm going to outline how it worked. So I started reading the Rodney Dangerfield memoir that he wrote just before he died. And it's great. It's wonderful. It's like it's written in his voice.
Oh, awesome.
It's so good. It's got jokes. So I want to say accidentally, but I had this tincture of what I thought was some weak ass CBD, but it turned out it was 1 part THC to 3 parts CBD, and I was doing about a milliliter of it. And I was just,
so CBD heavy, but still a lot of THC in the mix.
Yeah. And so I was laying in bed going like, I feel really high. The first night, not thinking what this is, not putting it together, and it kept me up all night. Whatever this very particular mix, maybe it's a sativa or whatever, kept me up all night. Didn't think about it. Fucking went throughout my day. Did it again the next night. Finished reading Rodney's book. But as I'm going along, I'm being inspired. He's talking about smoking pot his whole life. He's talking about he's telling jokes and telling how he writes jokes and how he did the process. And I would just like email myself little funny jokes, kind of almost written on the fly. I mean, they'll probably need a little bit of adjustment. But I was like, oh, I'm in this crazy creative space that I didn't think I would be able, I think I can, let's say there's a little secret path here, somewhere around here. So I'm wondering if I could put myself purposely into that space. You know what I mean? Maybe, I'd have to buy Rodney's book, but I just have it on a digital format right now. Oh, never mind. There's a pipe that we could walk across the river, but I don't know exactly where it's at.
Yeah.
Yeah. And this seems like danger zone or, at least a trash zone. Come on, bud. I thought he was leading us to the promised land. Just being a dog, though. But yeah, I think I need to figure out how I can repeat that state and be let's just say ready for the inspiration without forcing the inspiration.
Yeah. Oh man, I love dogs.
He's hilarious. He'll stay there just long enough to be like, is he gonna look for me? Yes, I am. Creative process.
I used to do this thing. It's not really the equivalent, so I don't know quite how they got this name. But I used to do this thing called mental suicides.
Okay.
Where suicides in terms of how coaches make you run between the lines on a basketball court.
Oh yeah.
You run tag one, try back the other. Yeah. So not in terms of death, but it just sort of felt like that PE exercise to me. But I would get really high, and I would sit in my chair, and I would sort of meditate and consciously slow my mind down and my thought process down, and I'd get as slow as possible and really slow myself down. And then after a certain point, I'd sort of mentally go bang and then try to race my thoughts as fast as possible to go from as slow as possible to thinking as quickly as possible and as many and jumping from subject to subject and really, and then getting sort of in this intense almost manic
almost
mindset
a fugue state,
and then backing it back off again and calming down and
wow.
After doing that for a while, it would sort of turn off the inner critic, and I was able to do a lot of writing that somehow by being deliberately slow and then being deliberately too fast, it's it's sort of like Goldilocks. If you haven't had the porridge that's too too hot, and you haven't had the porridge that's too cold, how do you know when the porridge is just right?
Huh?
You sort of and sort of by playing in those extremes, I could sort of get to a middle that was very effective for creative pursuits. And then,
yeah, no,
like,
I think it's powerful. I think it's kind of an altered state too.
But like, I haven't done that in a while because it was mostly caused by other things. But I'm sure this didn't help. But like 10 days after the last time I did that, I had a psychotic break.
Oh shit!
So I sort of it associates with that.
The two of them.
So I'm like, you know what? Maybe we don't race our mind as fast as possible and then slam the brakes on and then race it up again. I was like,
well, though I will say though, let's say this. Maybe as, let's say, a meditative practice, because it is a practice, and you're using your mind. Maybe the psychotic break was associated with, let's say, not doing it. That your brain was having an expectation of wanting to do it. I'm just saying, like if somebody has an injury and they stop exercising, and then the injury comes back worse. I don't know. I'm just throwing that out there because it sounded like you were getting a lot of, you were in a powerful state, and it's tough though, because in a weird way, like a psychotic state is a powerful state too.
Oh
yeah,
for sure.
Yeah.
Because,
don't do it.
I basically,
Don't do it.
Like in the process of like the things that led me to being in the hospital back in 2012, basically I got to a point where I was like, I think I'm either going to jail or the mental hospital, and I was like, if I can skew that towards the hospital and not jail, like I'm going to. And I sort of broke my brain on purpose. Like I knew I was on the edge. Well, I was holding on the edge, and I was like, what if you just jump off the edge and you go to the hospital instead of jail? And but like talking about that power in a break, like I was sort of at the standoff with these sheriff's deputies, and like as I was like pushing myself like over the edge, I was like, holy shit, this is funny. Because I was like,
how's it going?
Their job is to be reactive to what I do. And they usually anticipate like what a person's going to do. And I was like, I can see the fear on their face because they don't know what the fuck I'm going to do next.
Yeah.
And I was like, there is no way to predict what I'm going to do next, because even I don't fucking know. Like I rolled the dice. Like I was like, I don't know what's coming next, so they fucking can't possibly know. And that puts me like, somehow I was like I really did perceive like a literal power in that like we're so, even without meaning to, sort of, we color within the lines and we follow the script, and all of a sudden when this outside force is like, oh, this isn't in the playbook, I don't know what the fuck this kid's gonna do, it's like, oh shit.
Yeah. Well, it's the unexpected. This is like, whatever. The regimentation of the market is about doing what's expected. This is the crazy thing, though, if you think about like the violence of the police. It's like, now we just expect them to just murder people. This is like part of the job. Whatever. This is what you guys are. You're just public murderers.
But
I wanted to ask though, okay, so you obviously needed help. You didn't know how to get it from the people around you or whatever, or they probably didn't have the tools to help you. And I mean, but you're not, you strike me as being in a place where you don't have as many, I'll just say delusions, for lack of a better word. I mean, is that true?
Well, it was like, Bernie.
Yeah. This is a little camp here. Come here, bud. Wait, so real quick, 2012. Before that, you were a Republican sports fanatic?
No, already calmed down a little bit on the sports, but
Okay.
and like earlier, like I went to the hospital on like January 6th or something, like very early into 2012, and like
So just on the brink of Obama's second term.
I had a lot was going on, so like I was like it's hard to put it all into the context, but like
Sure.
I had a very close friend named Chris that like we'd sort of become. I thought we were just very close friends, but like learning in therapy, like we were kind of enmeshed with each other.
Oh,
like,
yeah.
Like it actually was maybe not the healthiest relationship. And this friend for years had been talking about this startup he was trying to build that would like you could do like personality assessments and see like what would be fulfilling for you to do in the world, and then it would plug you with experts that would sort of like coach you, like, you know, like say you're like in the corporate world, but you would like rather be a fitness instructor or like a tour guide or like
sounds amazing.
And so like the last like 2 years, every conversation had been about this company he was starting.
Yeah.
But he was also working for this company his dad worked for. I guess I won't.
Yeah.
I guess I won't name it, but
Yeah.
But like the company his dad worked for, basically, they use these ideas as like startups, basically as a way to commit securities fraud.
Oh yeah. Of course. Yeah.
And like the entire firm was like run by attorneys, so like if you came to them for like a help developing your small business, they'd be like, oh, this is a brilliant idea, and we're going to charge you X, and we'll own this percentage of it, and we'll take it to the market, and we'll get you some investors, and there's all this, and then none of that fucking happens. But along the way, you've signed all these like really aggressive non-disclosure agreements, and then when it all blows up and you call them out as as con artists, then they sue you for breaching the non-disclosure agreements.
Yep.
And I didn't realize like that this thing that we'd spent all this time talking about for like the past 2 years was like part of that.
Oh, that he was like developing this as a show for this.
Yeah. So like,
So he was kind of like in his dad's business by almost like, I'll just say this, like harvesting in entertainment we call it brain rape. So he is kind of talking to you about these various ideas, and then every time you guys go out and hang out, it's like, oh, let's talk about the app, and you're like, oh, wouldn't it be great if it did this?
Yeah.
And then he takes that idea and he puts it on paper.
Which I was like, most of it all came from him, but for sure there was an element of that.
Yeah.
But it was like for sure. But I thought it was all this thing he was building, and then at one point, because I was like pursuing stand-up comedy at the time, and like he wanted to use me to market the company. Like, here's this person, like they found out they had a passion for comedy, now they're pursuing stand-up, and like they're happier, and they're all this and stuff. And like he wanted to use me to advertise it. And like I just got this pit in my stomach. I was like, fuck no. and then like, so I started thinking, I was like, no, it's your friend. Like, it'll really help your friend out. Why are you uncomfortable with this? So I started doing research and digging more and more into what's really going on. And like in the course of the weekend, I was like, oh, it's because it's not really a company, it's securities fraud.
Yeah. It's a shell corporation with a lot of
and then
bells and whistles to make it look like a business.
And then so my friend wasn't always like the brightest. And so then, like, I projected, I was like, oh, like, he must be naive and being taken advantage of. Like, it's my job to extract him from this really bad thing.
Yeah.
So, like, I reached out to some people inappropriately, and, like, I sent him some stuff, and, like, that just killed this
friendship.
Like, this huge friendship. But it was, like, I had to do, like, some sneaky, like, poking around to find some stuff out. Like,
Yeah.
And then, so that had happened. I fell in love for like the first time in my life with this woman who I was going to like the Occupy events with, and like I was in a theater company with, and she like really changed my life. And I fell for her hard. And she loved me, but like just as a friend. Like she was not interested in a romantic relationship with me. And that just like crushed me. Like I was in therapy at the time, and my therapist was like, "You're not dying. That's just your heart breaking."
Yeah.
And I was like, "What?" and then literally later that day, I was like, "Oh my God, I'm gonna die." And I was like, "Oh no, wait, that's just my heart breaking." Like I thought she was joking when she said that, and that turned out to literally be something I had to tell myself.
Yeah.
So I had this fallout with a good friend. I'd had my unrequited love kind of broken, and then I was like, I was no longer a Republican, but.
All of your sense of identity had gone away in, like, within a short period of time.
But not only that, I had a friend who went to go run this from politics that went to go run this Senate campaign. And I did, but even though I was shifting away from Republican politics, part of me wanted to go leave state, leave everything behind, and just run that campaign.
Oh, yeah.
And I didn't. But then, like an earlier campaign we'd been on, we had this nefarious plan called Substance D, after the Scanner Darkly.
Oh yeah.
Because we'd watched the cell shaded animation movie together.
Yeah, Rich Linklater.
And Substance D was basically this plot to smear the San Diego City Councilwoman as a Scientologist to get her shut down in local politics, even though she wasn't a Scientologist. And we never actually put Substance D into effect. Like we were like, if this blows up, like our candidate would not want to win this way. Like she would be heartbroken. Like we can't do this. Her name was April. We're like, we cannot do this to April. Like so we made these like plans. We kind of dipped our toes in the water, and then collectively decided we weren't going to do it. But then I got this email from my friend, and it made reference to Substance D, and he was like, get in touch, and like he wanted me
to run to rat fuck a different
yeah. So the Senate candidate had answered a question about 9/11 very inartfully, and like,
oh, there you are.
It would have been possible to edit these comments he made that there was audio of or video of, and basically the idea was that we could smear this guy as a 9/11 truther, even though he probably wasn't.
Interesting.
And I was like, I was really torn about that, and I ultimately decided not to. But now, like, part of the delusion that was going on in my mind was that, like, maybe if I could move and shake in a big way in the world.
Oh, it's not a 4-leaf clover, but it's very close.
Oh, that's dope.
Yeah, I don't know what it is, but I'm going to keep it. Yeah, little funny little flower.
That's awesome. Little brass, or I don't know if it's brass, but little metal,
brassish
metal thing. But so like this friend that I had fallen in love with, I felt like that if I could make like a big enough splash in the world, that like maybe she would change her mind about how she felt about me. That like maybe I could earn her love, romantic love somehow. And so, like, you know, I had all these temptations to like just to be like powerful, to get back into politics by doing like some unethical things, and then like, I basically made myself crazy over paranoia, where like there's this software company called Legistorm, and like all the Senate aides and congressional staffers and Congress people's office like have memberships on this system called Legistorm, and it basically tracks all the legislation pending in America. And it shows you who the sponsors are and where the bill came from and where the corporate money's coming from and where like how all this stuff ties in. And they were looking for an employee to work for them. And as part of the application process, like they wanted you to prove that you were a capable researcher. So they asked you to, like, with your application, you had to submit a sheet of answers for all these questions they'd asked. And they were things like, you know, what college did the CEO's ex-wife attend?
Wow.
And I was like, I was smart enough.
Get over here. Yeah.
I was smart enough that I was like, you know, people are going to be searching for this, and they're going to be sharing.
Hey, come here.
Misinformation.
Hey, come here. Sit. Okay, you don't have to sit. Oh. So you were aware of the shadow of misinformation that was going to be cast.
Yeah. So like, I was like, you know, every answer that you find online that showed up after this question's been asked isn't trustworthy. And so I was like doing sophisticated like Boolean Google searches and like search algorithms looking for answers to this question from like a year ago instead of from today.
Yeah.
And they were very different. So I feel like I passed. I didn't get my application in because I went off the rails too quickly. But I was like, I figured out the game they were playing, and I was like, oh, they've planted misinformation, and they're like waiting to see if you can dig past the misinformation and see what it used to be and what like the real answers are.
Sure. Yeah,
so I was like very into like poking around on the internet, and then sorry, this is like...
No, I love it. This is great.
There's like a lot of context into what was happening.
This is fantastic.
But so like I'm researching all this stuff and kind of poking around in things like maybe shouldn't be poking around in, and like there was and so like I'd read an article about how like sometimes you'll see a sign, it'll say like job fair and then like some like ambiguous thing, and like those are actually like signs that they're secretly recruiting people with security clearances. Like there's code words in those signs.
Oh yeah, of course.
And they're not like really job fairs that just like everyone can show up at. And so I was like becoming aware of all these things, and there was a puzzle. I think it still exists, and it's hard to say where exactly the hard parameters are of this puzzle because it redirects you to different websites and stuff. But there's an online puzzle called Not Prawn that bills itself as the hardest puzzle in the world. And I was like, you know, what if that's not just a puzzle? Like, what if that's like a recruiting technique?
Sure.
Like, what if they're looking for the few people who can get to the end of this puzzle? And if you go...
I knew this guy wasn't paying attention. Neither was he, but... Well,
crisis averted.
Yeah.
But like if you go to this puzzle on the website, you can either like start the puzzle, or there's a page that you can click to that says instructions.
Oh, interesting.
And I was like, it's self-billed as the hardest puzzle in the world. And I was like, fuck you, you think you're not going to read the instructions? I was like, for sure, like the instruction page is where it really starts, not on what they think it is, not on what they say is page 1 of the puzzle. And so I was going to the instructions page and then viewing not just the instructions page, but the source code behind the instruction page, and how that page is I could put together. And there were little hidden elements in that. And I went off on this different route through this puzzle, starting from the source code of the instructions page. And I got to this point, and there was like a phone number, and it was like, you know, if you've made it this far, like, we're interested in you, call us.
Wow.
And the phone number was, it had a UK country code. And like being like, having all these blows to my identity and sort of being in this fragile state of mind and considering perpetuating some conspiracies of my own to get back into politics and whatever. Like I was not in a good mind frame at that point. And like,
it was MI5, wasn't it?
Yeah. I was like very suspicious of the British intelligence. And I was like, oh fuck, this is like this is the Brits, and like those fucks have their hands in everything, and they're bad people and they're dangerous. And I was like, and then like, I was like, you know, they know I'm looking at all this shit.
Oh yeah,
like they can trace this back to me. I was like, I have to fucking get out of my apartment.
Oh shit.
And so like, in a very paranoid state of mind, I got in my car and started driving, and then I just kept getting more and more paranoid. Like I was in Topanga Canyon at the time, and I came out of Topanga Canyon.
Well, Topanga Canyon definitely breeds some paranoia.
Yeah,
for sure.
And so
those dirty hippies.
I came out of Topanga Canyon, and I was driving into Santa Monica, and I was like in Santa Monica. And then I looked up, and it's the fucking Rand Corporation. And I was like, oh, fuck, that's what they're there. Like, this is the wrong part of town. I got to get out of here.
Wow.
And so...
hey, get over here.
So I started driving...
Come here. You started driving?
So I started driving north. And then like I wasn't really paying attention, and then so I went north on PCH for a bit, and then I was like, "Fuck, there's Point Mugu Naval Station." And like I was like it's everywhere. I just felt like the military-industrial complex net like closing on me.
By the way, this is your book. This is like Illuminatus meets
So. I went up into the hills above Malibu because I used to love to get high and drive those back roads. And so I went to the hills above Malibu, and I kept like running into this same car. And like this white van like kept showing up. I'm like driving all these back roads randomly, and I keep saying like the same car, and so like I was like, fuck, they're following me. And there's a road called Tuna Canyon.
Oh yeah.
And at a certain point it becomes a one-way road.
Yes.
You can only go down. You can't come back up it. So I went like
Barney.
So I drove down Tuna Canyon, and then there's like a pull-out spot. And I was like, I'm just going to pull out here and wait, because like if they are following me, they have to come by me. And if they're waiting for me at the bottom and I don't show up, they're going to eventually, like who's ever following me is going to, like they have to come down this road. And I don't know what the fuck was really going on, because I'm fairly...
You're out of your mind.
Yeah, like not really in touch with reality. But like 15, 20 minutes go by, and this van that like I kept seeing that I thought was following me, like comes down the road, and they pull up next to where I'd pulled off. So I walked up to him and I was like, hey,
what's up, bro?
I was like, I'm just cruising around these back roads. I keep running into you. Are you lost? Can I help you find where you're going or anything? They're like, no, we're good. And they drove off. And then like I waited a little while longer, and then I drove to the bottom of the Tuna Canyon, and there was like a different van. It's just like a white unmarked utility van, just like sitting there waiting.
Wow.
And I was like, fuck. And I forget what I said, but I pulled up to them, I said something to them, and I think they just reacted because like I think it might have been clear that this person was maybe not in touch with reality. But I said something to them, and their reaction spooked me. And like I took off again.
What would you remember what it was?
I have it written.
Okay.
I have it written down, but it was like I asked the question. It was something along the lines of like, is this like a recruitment effort, or are you trying to contain a problem or something?
That's what you said to them.
Yeah.
Oh,
and of course, of course you'd act really weird to someone asking you that question if you didn't know, like.
That's amazing.
But also, like, their reaction, like, twigged me out. So
well, there's no good answer to that.
The pursuit, to whatever extent it was real, and I think it was mostly imagined, but something weird happened on that road.
I will tell you what it is, because I was recently up there. There is a shit ton of private security roaming that area. And so anytime somebody fucking just, because they're fucking bored out of their goddamn minds, they got nothing going on. So anytime there's like a little whiff of, I was driving around in my fucking beat up 4Runner, and I was just turning around. I was actually trying to find the neighborhood where Val Kilmer used to live, because I was an assistant for him. And I was like, oh, is it this road? No. And so I kept on turning down these like roads that end up being private roads. And he wasn't on a private road, so I was going in the wrong place. But then I noticed that the one security guard in his fucking Mustang or whatever it was fucking decided to follow me. And because I was pulling over to fucking text and to make phone calls and stuff, he ended up passing me by. And then when I get to the bottom of kind of the hike of where I was supposed to go, there were a couple cop cars there. And I think he was going over to talk to them. So it's like they are just high alert for no goddamn good reason. So that's probably what you were.
Well, I think that probably plays into some of it.
Yeah.
But
I also think there might be a government facility there that's
100% there is.
Yeah, because the roads are so confusing.
So you'll like where this is going to wrap up in about 3 or 4 minutes. So my fleeing from my pursuers, real or imagined, gets more desperate, and I go up this road. It's the one by I used to remember it, but it's the one by the fire station in Malibu.
Oh yeah.
And I go up into the hills, and like my car's sort of racing, and I'm like, okay, like fuck, you're flipping out. Like you have to calm yourself down. Like you can't be driving around like driving faster and faster, getting more and more paranoid. And so I parked my car, and I walked down this path like a little ways. I'm like trying to settle my brain, and there was a car that had went by that I was like, maybe that's one of the people following me, and then they never came back. And then as I was sitting there trying to calm down, I was like, fuck, like if those people are after you, they're not going to come back down the road the same way. Like they're going to work around from the side of this hill, and they're going to come up the path this way. And then so I started listening.
Get over here.
And I heard something on the path. And I was like, fuck, I think someone's down there. So I was like, hey, who's ever down there? Like I just saw a snake head that way, so be careful. And this guy came out of the bushes, like fucking screaming at me that I was trespassing.
Oh yeah, I've experienced that before too.
Basically, I went back to my car, and this guy wouldn't leave me alone.
You were leaving.
And he got between me and my car and wouldn't let me leave.
Wow.
And then this white pickup truck pulls up, and this guy from the white pickup truck is trying to take control of the situation. He keeps saying he's a retired sheriff from Louisiana. And I was like, fuck off. We're not in Louisiana. Like, I don't care.
We can go this way.
And he's just making everything more tense.
Yeah.
And the guy between me and my car, I finally was like, I have PTSD. You are making me feel unsafe. Get out of the way and let me leave. And he was like, no. And I just screamed, I'm a motherfucker! And like charged him, and I punched that fucking guy in the face as hard as I could.
Good.
And then he punched me in the face a couple times. And
wow.
And then basically
fucking beast mode.
I was like worried about losing the fight. And I know some like dirty fight moves because I used to do Krav Maga and stuff.
Yeah.
So I basically I put my thumbs through his eye sockets.
Oof.
And like I was like, I'm gonna take your life, I'm gonna take your eyes, and I'm gonna take you down. Like, and then like right as I was like really like going for the eyes, the retired sheriff from Louisiana pulled me off him, and like I jerked out of his hands and into the roadway, and I was like down on the road, and like a car was coming. Ooh. So like I spun all the way across the road into this dirt patch on the other side, and I got up and I was like fucking dizzy, and so I'm like shouting at everyone to come back, and like
get over here.
At that point, sheriff's deputies showed up.
Shit.
And then like a lot more happens on the way to the hospital, but that was
wow.
sort of like what the breakdown was.
Wow.
But here's the thing you said about government like facilities. So I found out later that
I gotta keep an eye on this guy. There's a little hole in the fence. Come on, bud.
That where I was, like where I'd ended up, you know, I don't know what was really going on in reality there. But in my paranoia about like intelligence agencies and the military and like fleeing from all that, where I'd gotten out of my car to calm myself down was the edge of a former Nike nuclear missile base.
Oh, that's right. Yeah.
And like part of it is now like there's two parts to Nike missile bases. Like there's this base was called LA-78, and there's LA-78L, which is launch, and LA-78C, which is control.
Yeah.
And LA-78C is now owned by the county, and they have a helicopter landing pad there and a fire watch camp and maybe some cells for prisoners because so many firemen are inmates.
Yeah.
And then LA-78L, the launch part, it's not quite clear what happened to that, but Louis Jolin West had bought it from the government, and he was going to use it to have an underground facility for like centers for violence prevention, where he's basically going to experiment on minority children, doing some MK Ultra stuff.
Wow.
And so, like, I was like, what the fuck was going on there? And then, like, a month after I was hospitalized, there was a rock slide in that part of Malibu, and they fucking changed where the road goes. Like, the road doesn't even go there anymore. Like, I can take you to near where it happened, but they fucking changed the built environment around where that base used to be. And so I'm like, oh, what the fuck really happened? And so, like, I'm not... For a while, I was, like, very invested and hung up on the idea that there must be something evil there, that there's, like, a black site or CIA bullshit or some sort of experimental stuff. And I kind of think there is, but I'm not 100%. Like, it wouldn't shock... If you told me, nope, you just had a breakdown, and it just used to have this history.
Interesting,
But like,
though.
all the stuff to break down is like to have this paranoia that's so cognizant of the Cold War, and to have it on the edge of a nuclear missile base.
Well, it's interesting though, because I definitely think that this not prawn is probably a espionage recruiting tool for sure, but I don't think that necessarily put you on any kind of watch list.
No, for sure. Yeah, like
so that's I want to say that's one kind of coincidence or synchronicity that you were like already like digging around in this kind of intelligence. But again, like I still think you have a fucking amazing book in like kind of like in diving as deep into your fantasies about this. Like I just finished Jim Carrey's Memories and Misinformation, which is kind of a hybrid of a biography and just like fantasy apocalypse scenario, and it's a beautifully written. That
sounds like maybe a slightly more interesting version. I'm calling it more interesting, but even though I liked his, but like Norm Macdonald's memoir.
Oh yeah,
that's just like mostly made up.
Yeah. Well, it's also coming from Jim Carrey, so he's giving you a very kind of privileged view of how the upper echelons of Hollywood works, but then throwing these fucking AI, VR, AR fantasies on top of it. It's really fantastic. But what I'm saying is you take all of the real things that were happening to you and explore these kind of like fantasy realms, and then like when you get actually picked up, instead of going to the facility, this is like a fucking Philip K. Dick novel. This is the moment where you go from being somewhat psychotic in a somewhat firm reality to then fucking Dr. West, he's an advanced cyborg, comes into the facility. It's like, yes, you are onto something, Brian. And really, because then you get to kind of like explore whatever the fantasy realm is of this.
We warned you so many times to stay away, Mr. McGranahan, and yet here you are.
I just want to make sure he doesn't go through this hole. Oh, good. He's more interested in that side of the road. Yeah, like because I think it's like kind of I want to say like especially nowadays in our current like literally nobody gives a shit about anything anymore. I think even espionage is just like, yeah, I just go and I clock in, I do my job, I spy, I go home, I lie to my wife. It's like nobody is invested in the same way. But I think 2012 was probably the end of that kind of serious investment. Maybe 2016, but yeah. What were you going to say?
Oh, so then the other kind of like coincidental weirdness with it all is so my car got impounded while I was in the hospital, and my dad went and got my car for me, and there was all this information missing on the impound list. Like there was no address for where they picked my car up from. And like on the impound note, it said like car impounded after driver attacked a parking attendant. And I was like, there was not a parking lot within miles.
No.
Like there was a guy.
Don't do it. I mean, he may have been the parking attendant and was just acting like a PTSD psychopath to cover up the fact that he was actually...
But I was just on a dirt thing on the side of the road. Like, there was no parking.
Oh, maybe again, like, it was a hidden... There was a... But again, like, there's two... To me, like, there's two things. It's like, yes, they could be covering up something.
Yeah, I mean...
Yeah, then the other side is like, we just need to fill in this fucking paperwork.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Like... like the details become very important to you, but for some cop, it was just some bullshit paperwork at the end of the day. It's like, what the fuck? Some kid out in Malibu went nuts. Like, all right, whatever.
Yeah.
Like there's a very low...
Well, we don't know where we picked up this car, but yeah. Which is the good thing about, like, in a weird way, the good thing about the fucking fucked up system that we have is like, yeah, you can pour all the paranoia you want into the gaps of how incompetent everybody is, but truly, it's just incompetence. It is really 99%. Like, when somebody actually has an agenda, let's say like fucking the president, he can get some shit done. you know? But mostly it's just like people dithering around at the edges of fucking being able to get shit done. But all that stuff will definitely, you know, okay, so I have a somewhat similar story of my psychotic break, but mine happened January 11th, 2001, a very famous day in history. I was writing a screenplay about satanic politicians, right? Politicians that were using human sacrifice to make their way up the political ladder. And I was using, you know, Gary Condit and Deshandra Levy. Do you remember that?
Yeah, that got so knocked out of the news by consequent events, but that was a big deal then.
Yeah. And so my take on it was she was abducted, because the real case ended up being she was just murdered in the park by a homeless guy or something. Whatever, that's the official story. But you know, in mine, it was she got abducted by this group that was pretending to be homeless guys, right? They were actually these agents of Gary Condit, and she was going to be his sacrificial bride at some kind of like, whatever, satanic, Masonic, whatever, secret murder group, Bohemian Grove, you know what I mean? Whatever it was. I was like, and I'm writing this from the point of view, really, super fucking, because I'm a big fan of Robert Anton Wilson and like all these kind of like, really the grand conspiracies. I was super into them. And I was like, I'm writing this from the standpoint of like, this is how things get done in Hollywood, or I mean in Washington. There's real human sacrifices. They're really a satanic cult. So I had this fucking huge, just fucking paranoia, fucking believing the conspiracy theories to the nth degree. Like,
yeah.
Like I was really in it. And I was also a crackhead at the time. I was smoking a lot of crack. And whatever else. I was fucking super stressed out from fucking going to film school, and just like my life was a mess. And then fucking September 11th happens, and I'm like, oh, this is it. This is the fucking human sacrifice. This is all the things, all of it coming together. This is, of course, what needed to happen. Blah, blah, blah. Like, I'm in that space of just being like, this is, all these things I imagined are real because this global event is happening. And, you know, that period of time between September 11th and basically April 1st was a huge old fucking drug crack binge for me for that period of time. Then I got sober, and my relationship with conspiracy now is I just don't put any energy into it. It does not matter. It's not going to make my life any better or worse. It's sure there's some crazy things that are happening, really happening out there that are not conspiracies, that you don't need to label them conspiracies. But as soon as you go into the place of calling something conspiracy, it's like, I check out right away. I'm done.
So like that's kind of the conclusion I came to. Like I have really smart friends, they're husband and wife, and they were kind of 9/11 truthers for a while. And I was running with my friend's wife. We used to do trail running together. And I was like, you know, it's not that you're necessarily wrong, but I was like,
look at this.
You still got to pay, you know, I was like, you still have rent to make. You still got to work your job. Like, how does this, you know, like if it were all blown open, wide open right now, I was like,
how's it going to improve your life?
I was like, you know, we're still stuck in these Middle Eastern wars. We still have this corporatocracy. You know, I was like, there might be 3 or 4 people who end up going to jail. You know, maybe another few people who end up suicided to keep things quiet.
Yeah.
You know, I was like, less than 10 people are going to really face the consequences of it. Like, even if it was all blown wide open. And I was like, I don't think it's ever going to be blown wide open. And it was just like, yeah.
That is the biggest tumbleweed I have ever seen.
Oh, that's excellent.
Yeah.
I left my phone in the car, but I kind of want a picture of that. That's dope.
But yeah, but again, how does it improve your life to believe these shitty things? And it doesn't. It doesn't do a one fucking. But I will counter with this, and it's like, well, if you're a person out there making money off of fucking selling conspiracy books and fucking, that's how you make your life better, is fucking be a fucking professional kook. But I don't want to be a professional kook.
Yeah, me neither. I don't have it in me. I flirt with the idea all the time. I'm like, I think I could do better flat Earth than the flat earthers could. Like, you know, and the problem is there are real conspiracies.
Well, but again, I wouldn't even call them conspiracies, because I would say that they are mechanisms of the powerful. And those mechanisms of the powerful, maybe to us, appear as conspiracies. But if you have a fucking board of directors that designs an algorithm to make their fucking game super addictive, that's just the market. There's no conspiracy there or whatever. I just think I'm using that as the lowest hanging fruit. But really, realistically, like even this fucking not prawn, that's not a conspiracy. It may just be a mechanism of how some one branch of recruiting for MI5 operates, or maybe it's just one branch of MI5 that's trying to fucking draw kooks in and fucking keep their brains fucking spun up in a fucking way so they don't go harm anybody. Or maybe it's a way of finding terrorists. I don't know. Like, it's like there's so many.
Well, and that's like the thing is like once you get into like the
Did they come and fix this fence while we were...
I kind of think they did. Isn't that where we...
It's typically where we come in. Maybe there's another one over here. But that'd be weird if they did it like literally in the hour that we were gone. We could just creep around there, but
like sort of the
Why are we talking about a conspiracy? This is fucking with my brain hard.
Yeah, the Matrix has been altered.
Yeah,
agents are lurking.
Exactly, since we fucking came out here. Yeah, it looks like that's. I mean, it looks like they did both while we were fucking gone. That is hilarious. That's so funny. Like, and of course, in my more paranoid fucking days, I would have been of this like, oh, maybe the computer's just resetting and I wasn't paying attention. But yeah, it's just like they just came out and while we weren't looking, fucking fixed this hole in the fence. Yeah, I know, that's where we went, Barney. I agree. They fucked us over. They fucked us over. Oh, what were you saying?
Oh, so have you ever heard of the software company Inslaw?
No.
So part of it is really proven fact, and then part of it is wild conjecture. But this company called Inslaw, they made this software called Enhanced Promise.
Okay.
And Enhanced Promise was a means of integrating separate federal court databases so they could all talk to each other and all communicate seamlessly. And it was like really revolutionary for the time. And basically what the government did is they stole the software. They never paid the company that developed it
wow.
the full amount. Then they used the Justice Department to try to deliberately bankrupt this company. They sold the software to Israeli intelligence, and then it ended up on the black market. And so like all that's proven.
Documented, yeah.
But then like where the conspiracies come into is people will claim that Enhanced Promise made its way into the hands of Osama bin Laden.
Okay.
And that's how he managed his bank accounts all across the globe. And then other people are saying, no, Enhanced Promise. Yeah. Oh, here we go.
Yeah. Just a sec. I'm writing this joke.
Yep. But then there people are like, no, like, Enhanced Promise is the software they use to run like the simulation on 9/11 that like overrode the FAA, and like you can't prove where the software shows up, and it's turned into this boogeyman because they kind of know what the software does, but like I mean, some people have, but most people haven't seen the actual software. So it's like, who knows what its capabilities are? Who knows what's realistic about what it was doing and what it wasn't? But then, like,
now we have to get out of this pen. I think we can go somewhere. There's a gate right there. Enhanced promise.
You know, but like, yeah, like you get to the point where
ultimately, I'm going to just say this. I'm going to just stand back and say this. Ultimately, all fucking conspiracies are fucking rich people trying to make more money.
Yeah.
That's it. It's just greed. There's no conspiracy theory. It's just greed. It's just literally greed. You know? And I guess if you're operating at a certain level, you know?
Like that's why I think we talked about it on a different hike we did when we went to the waterfall and then up that hill.
Oh, yeah.
But like my favorite conspiracy is the fictional one from the Robert Ludlum book, Road to Gandolfo.
Oh, yes.
And it's a conspiracy to kidnap the Pope and hold him hostage for $1 from every Catholic in the world. And like, I think that's a hilarious conspiracy.
Yeah.
I love that. Like, I like... Barney.
What are you doing, bud? He's like,
you know,
that guy had food.
I'm not big fans of the Catholic Church or the Pope, but I'm also like, I'm not like super anti. You know, I don't wish any specific harm to the Pope, but the idea of just like, we've got the Pope. We know there are like 4.1 billion of you Catholics out there.
Give us the money.
You know, just $1 each. I know you leave more than that in the collection plate on Sunday.
Well, it's also, you know, you like, even just thinking about this is like, oh, they're just a conspiracy of virgins. They're just like, how does a virgin become very powerful? Well, you become a priest.
Yeah, I mean, reducing conspiracy theories just to greed, I think is
greed or trying to get laid. You know, I think that those are the other two.
I haven't thought about it in those terms, but it's like George Carlin's bit. You know, it's like, yeah, the ultimate conspiracy is, like, there's a God and he needs your money.
Yeah. No, seriously.
You know, like what need do you need to blow up buildings and have secret armies and stuff? It's just like, just tell them there's an invisible being that like you gotta cough up.
Yeah.
You know.
I mean, to me, it's like all of it comes down to either somebody trying to fucking get their dick wet or fill their wallet, or both. You know, because I feel like a lot of people trying to fill their wallet are just really trying to get their dick wet. You know. Yeah, they're just chasing that. This was fucking fantastic.
I hope I didn't monopolize too much talking about my crazy experience. That felt good to get out and sort of talk about. I was like, oh, I'm not leaving much room for Sean to interject.
No, which is why. Everybody gets to hear my dumb voice all the time. But I think the good thing is now you have this, you know, whatever to listen to if you were to ever build something bigger.
And we're gonna talk.
Cut.
Oh, yeah.